Hello, everybody, and welcome to Heartlight Vedic Astrology. Today I was going to talk about the lunar eclipse that's coming up, or the chandra grahan, as it's known as in Sanskrit, this 14th of March, 2025. This talk is from a Vedic astrology perspective, also known as Jyotish, which is ancient Indian astrology, which is more than 5,000 years old. And it seems like the theme for this moment in time is a new cycle begins. So let's take a look. Note beforehand, the information presented here is for educational purposes only and should not be considered medical, financial, professional, or life advice of any kind. If you are in need, please contact an appropriate professional for support. Then you might take a minute or two to read the rest of this disclaimer. If you're new to Vedic astrology, Jyotish are my videos. All of my teaching videos on the subject are my consults playlist. They can be found there. Wherever you see a double asterisk in one of my talks, that means there's a teaching video on that subject if you'd like to learn more. Also, my channel is all about playlists. I'm good about organizing my talks into different subject areas so that they're easy to find, like planets and grahas playlist, houses and bhavas playlist, yogas and planetary combinations playlist, and there are others. Also, if you'd like to learn astrology by looking at famous birth charts, I have a video titled Birth Chart Archive List 2024, where I list a lot of the famous charts, famous people, places, and moments in time that I've analyzed on the channel. I'll be updating this soon, but at least that's the best list right now to check out what famous charts I've analyzed and the videos you can find them in. Also, since we are talking about eclipses today, I do have other eclipse videos if you'd like to learn more about those. So I have a general lunar solar eclipses video, chandra, surya, grahan. Also have an auspicious timing of eclipses or muhurta video. And with them in Vedic astrology, there's a whole branch of astrology called muhurta or auspicious timing. So how to work with the energy of the eclipses. Also, I have a relatively newly published video titled Mantras for Rahu, Ketu, and Eclipses. So if you're interested in mantra practice related to eclipses, you might check that out. And I do have the three newest teaching videos I've published: Introduction to Planetary Periods, or the Dasha sequence, Chandra Mangala Yoga, or Moon Mars combination, and then Virgo constellation, or Kanya rashi. If you're new to all of this, then I have listed here about 10 videos that are, I think, foundational so that you can start like a North, South, and East Indian style charts, introduction to navigating birth chart, the Lugna, also known as the Ascendant Rising Sign First House. Anyway, if you're new, you can take a look at this list of 10 videos to get you started so you have a solid foundation. Okay, so let's take a look at the eclipse path because we always want to qualify any kind of eclipse. And so basically, when we're looking at eclipses, the place of highest visibility is the place that's going to feel the effects of the eclipse the most. Okay. So this map I got from Time and Date. It's a really nice site actually for general, astronomical data about eclipses. So the time here is set for 14th March 2025, 2:54 a.m. That's Eastern Standard New York time. That's close to where I live. But you can see the sort of pink area right over North and South America and part of Antarctica. This is going to be the highest place of visibility. So they're going to feel the impact of this eclipse the most. Okay, and then you can see coming out to the sides here, left and right, it gets a little bit more faint. Okay, so again, the less visibility of the eclipse, the less effects there will be, although there will still be some. And you can see that while most visibility is over North and South America, places where there's really no visibility are Central Asia, Eastern Africa, Western Australia, and basically the Indian Ocean. Okay, so keep that in mind as we go through the talk. Okay, so here's the chart for this moment in time of the lunar eclipse on the 14th of March. It's set for 2:54 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. Again, that's New York City, USA. And let's see. I'm just going to go through this basically just to give you a little bit of orientation for the eclipse chart. I usually go through this in depth, and I will. But actually, usually with the eclipse videos that I do, I kind of link it to a specific person, place, moment in time, so that we can see the kind of embodiment, potential embodiment of energies. Okay. and not just keep this sort of an extract or abstract exercise. Okay. So anyway, this is a North Indian style chart. That's what I use in my work. And so if you're looking for the first house, ascendant, rising sign, or lugna, all different names are the same thing. What you want to do is look at the diamond in the top middle here. Okay. And there's a little 9 in the bottom corner. Okay. Little 9 in the, even though this is the first house, that 9 in the bottom corner refers to the ninth constellation of the zodiac, which is Sagittarius or Danu in Sanskrit. Okay. So we have a Sagittarius rising chart here, or Danu Lugna. Okay. Now, to get to the other houses, you want to count inclusively from the first house counterclockwise, so up and to the left. So the second house is this kind of upside down triangle with the 10 in the bottom corner. That's the second house. Okay. And you go all the way around to the 12th house. Okay. Just orient you a little bit. Okay. So again, this chart set for 14th March, 2:54 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. The day lord of this time is Jupiter, and the hora lord is Moon. Okay. So Jupiter is the Lugnatia, meaning the ruling planet for the whole chart, because Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter. Okay. So we go right up here to the top, okay, of the first house. The first house symbolizes things like just the general, like if it was a person, general physicality of somebody, also psychology of somebody. Okay. Jupiter, is considered the great natural benefic. So I always think of Jupiter as kind of like Santa Claus, like giving out gifts and generous and just fair, truthful. So kind of keeping track with the kids of who's on the good list and who's on the naughty list, that sort of thing. Kids in general, Jupiter represents children. Jupiter also represents like teacher, especially spiritual teacher, represents law. That sort of thing. Okay, so a lot of diplomacy, so a lot of positive things coming from Jupiter. Okay, the hora lord or our lord is Moon. Okay, and Moon represents things like the public. It represents the emotional mind, the intuitive mind, feelings, emotion, nurturance, mother. Okay, Moon is in this chart is in the very last degree of Leo. So we would call that Sunday. Whenever a planet is in the first or last degree of any sign, that means it's going to be unstable because it's switching energies. Like from going from Leo, which is a fire sign, it's going to go into Virgo within actually 30 minutes of this exact moment. Right? So in the middle of this eclipse, Moon is switching signs from a fire sign to an earth sign. Okay, going from action to kind of practicality or tangible. Okay, that's that, motivation or interest. Okay. So, Jupiter also represents things like finance and banking. Okay. So Jupiter, unfortunately, in this chart, it's the ruling planet of the chart, but it's in the sixth house of acute issues and problems. Okay. So that means that there will be some drag on the whole chart. Okay. Um, yeah, and so the other thing is that Moon, it's not only Sunday, so it's unstable because it's crossing, signs from Leo to Virgo, but it's being aspected by two very strong malefic planets that are both unstable themselves. Okay, so Moon is in the sign of Leo. Leo is ruled by Sun, and Sun is aspecting here, so that will bring a little bit of strength to the ninth house where the Moon is sitting. But Sun is also Sunday. It's in the last degree of Aquarius. Okay, so the Sun is also unstable. The Moon also, besides representing like the mind and intuition, represents kind of queen energy or a regent, and the Sun represents the king. So we have both the Sun and the Moon, the king and the queen, the two regents of the place or the world that are unstable. Okay. In addition, the other malefic that's aspecting the moon is Saturn. Okay, Saturn is in its own sign of Aquarius, so a fixed air sign, meaning like fixed ideas, like ideas that are hard to transform. And Saturn is being in its own sign is very strong. Saturn is a planet that represents things like obstacles, delays, chronic disease, death can even be. Okay, and the Sun, besides representing the king or the president, represents things like career and soul path. Okay. Now, the thing is, Saturn is very strong. It's the strongest between these three, Saturn, Sun, and Moon. Saturn right now, you can see that Saturn and Sun are about a degree apart. So right before this eclipse, basically, Sun crossed Saturn. Now, when a planet is that close to, a true planet is that close to the Sun, it's eclipsed by the Sun. Okay, not like the eclipse we're going to be talking about, but just the light of the Sun eclipses the visibility of that planet. So right now you can't see Saturn. So what that means is when you have a combust planet, you can't see the outer effects of what that planet represents. So obstacles, delays, that sort of thing are a little less evident on the external world. But the thing is, internally, those the effects of that planet will be felt more acutely. So Saturn also represents things like anxiety, doubt, skepticism, fear. Okay. So a lot of that going on right now. The other thing is that Saturn and Sun are both in a nakshatra. So nakshatras, there are about 27 nakshatras in Vedic astrology, also known as lunar mansions. And each night the moon passes through a different nakshatra. So after 27 nights, you get a lunar month. Now, Saturn and Sun, okay, besides Saturn being very strong, very destructive on its own as a planet, both Saturn and Sun are in a nakshatra called Purva, which is symbolized by the front legs of a funeral pyre. So again, funeral pyre, right? I mean, we're talking like flames, combustion, ash, smoke, you know, basically, uh, in Indian culture, releasing the soul from the physical body. Okay. So the Sun, again, uh, leader, president, Sun can represent government, can represent father, Saturn, like both going through a destructive phase. Okay. But Saturn, it's like rather than like a outward combustion, it's like an implosion. It's like an internal destruction of these things. And again, the moon is here. So when you have Saturn, like this kind of strong Saturn on the moon again represents the emotional mind, the intuition. There's going to be, again, a lot of fear, skepticism, doubt, that sort of thing. There's a little bit of strength in the ninth house, and the ninth house also represents things like father, government, authority, okay, spirituality, religion, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of, again, internal destruction going on along these lines, okay. Third house represents siblings, neighbors, but also courage. So since the Sun is visible, even though it's unstable, being in the last degree, it's Sundi, and even though it's on the funeral pyre here, Purva, Saturn, the planet of fear and that sort of thing, it's almost like there's a leader or government or father even who on the outside is demonstrating courage because Sun is a fiery planet and fire represents things like courage and action and that sort of thing. But internally, there's a lot of fear and chaos and destruction going on. Okay, so it's almost a little bit of, fake it till you make it type of energy, frankly, right? So anyway, so the thing is the moon here, since we're talking about, and this is just getting into the moon here, and that's important because that's, what we're leading up to, is that the moon is very unstable, okay, for various reasons, not just because it's Sunday, not just because it's got two, malevolent planets on it, malefic planets on it, but very strong malevolent planets in specific nakshatras that's going to be very challenging to moon, which again is public, mind, emotions, nurturing, mother even. So actually mom and dad are both parents in here. You could think of it that way, being very challenged. And the thing is, Jupiter, again, is a great benefic, but Jupiter is, again, challenged itself. Okay, so altogether, what you can get here is public concern generally, but financial governance, essentially. Okay. Now, the Dasha period, Dasha is a planetary period, which is, I think, unique to Vedic astrology as far as I understand. So the Dasha period at this time is Sun, Rahu, Jupiter, Mars. Okay, so that brings us to Sun, again, which we've talked about is very unstable. Rahu, which is the north node of the moon, and that's part of what creates eclipses. Rahu is a planet that brings the north and south nodes of the moon, bring energy of like hidden, unexpected things. Okay, and that's the energy of eclipses. Like it's like an expect the unexpected type energy, always with eclipses. Rahu is in the fourth house. Rahu brings not only hidden, unexpected things, but it also has an ambitious energy. And the fourth house represents things like family line, home, mother, yeah, property. So you can see that there's some ambition here, okay, regarding fourth house matters. And then we're picking up Jupiter again. Now the thing with Jupiter, even though Jupiter's in the sixth house, where it's compromised just by being in the sixth house, a negative house of acute issues, there is locally a parivartana yoga going on. So parivartana yoga is when you exchange two planets. So Jupiter is a sign of Venus, and Venus is also with Rahu in a sign of Jupiter, because the fourth house has the 12th constellation there of Pisces, which is ruled by Jupiter. So because Jupiter's in a sign of Venus and Venus is a sign of Jupiter, you can basically exchange them in your mind. And so you're going to get the two benefics in both the sixth house and the fourth house. Okay. So, yeah, there's what I'm seeing here is like a protective energy of the destruction, of the changes that are going on here. Okay. And again, Jupiter is the great benefic. So, and Venus is also a great, very strong benefic. So, that's kind of nice for the time being, okay, because they are there for a while. So it's almost like you've got a doubling up of Venus and Jupiter, and you do have more Jupiter and Venus around the whole chart, which is nice. So that should take the edge off a bit. That should provide some grace a bit, but again, not entirely. Okay. Then you have Mars as a, sub period here. Mars is in the seventh house. The seventh house is about spouse like partners, independent business relationships, but also the seventh house represents the path in life. Okay? And Mars is a bit out of the mix here because Mars is one of the few planets that's not going to be involved in the eclipses that are coming up this month. As we'll see, Sun and Moon are within 30 minutes to 30 minutes for the moon, about 5 hours for the sun. That's all going to line up on this, Pisces Virgo axis here. And then actually for the second eclipse coming at the end of the month on the 29th, Saturn will also join the party. So the only planet's not involved, the only planet not involved in this whole, eclipse in one way or another is Jupiter's, seemingly out of the mix, but through parivartana, it is part of the eclipse. The only planet that won't be involved is Mars. So what is Mars doing? Mars is in the seventh house again. Spouse-like partner, independent business relationships, but again, path in life. So Mars is an action planet. It's another fire planet. It's a bit erratic, though. That's just the nature of Mars. It's a pioneer. It's a rebel. Those sorts of energies. And it's in a house it doesn't really do super great in. It's in Gemini, which is an enemy sign for Mars. And Gemini is a dual air sign, meaning that there are like contrasting ideas here. Okay. So we're running Mars as a sub period here. So it's sort of like being at a crossroads, considering different ideas, like what actions do I take? Because there's clearly some challenge going on here, but it's like, which road do I take moving forward? Okay. So you could see this as being indecisive or some confusion as well. Okay. Now, the shop period of Sun, Rahu, Jupiter, Mars is switching to Sun, Rahu, Sun, Rahu, Saturn. Oh, let me just back up a little bit. So the shop period I was just talking about, Sun, Rahu, Jupiter, Mars. When you put those energies together, you get ambitious leader, potentially with some sort of legal issues. Because especially when you get Jupiter and Mars together, that can be legal or law issues. Okay. Then this period is changing to Sun, Rahu, Saturn on the 23rd of March. Okay, so very quickly after this period, so within about 10 days. So then we're switching off this Jupiter, which is frankly providing some grace and holding this together. And now we're like bringing this quite destructive Saturn into the forefront. Okay. Now, Saturn will still be combust at this point. Okay. But people, again, especially anybody running Saturn in their own chart, will be feeling the effects of this deep destructive Saturn internally. And then on actually within a few minutes of the eclipse coming up on March 29th, Saturn will come back online right before it slips into Pisces. Okay. And then we'll see more of the, frankly, outward destructive effects of Saturn. Okay. So there's going to be end and delays and obstacles to the energies I've already mentioned, which again, sun. So sun is leader, government, authority, presidents, um, um, also career, also life purpose, also health. Okay. And then Rahu is like, again, this ambitious energy to, it looks like, again, protect fourth house matters. Yeah. Okay. So, in addition to all this, the Lugna nakshatra, so the Lugna again is the rising sign. And the nakshatra for the rising sign, you can see the ascendant is in 6 degrees, 12 minutes. That nakshatra associated with that point is Mula. Okay, Mula is symbolized by a bunch of roots tied together. So there is this kind of like farming energy, so to speak. But I always think of it, there is also this like destructive element. So you can see there's quite a bit of destruction going on here. There's a lot of destruction, but you can also see it as transformation. Okay. Again, whenever there's one ending, there's a new beginning. Okay. But the thing is, like when you're planting a seed, okay, a lot of seeds, even if you water it and take care of it, a lot of seeds don't make it to the surface because there's a precarious journey for it to make it through the soil to the top and turn into whatever, a fruit tree or I don't know, a vegetable or rose bush or something like, whatever the seed's supposed to become. Okay. And we have this mula right at the top here. And this mula energy, again, because it's the first house sets the tone for the whole chart. So there is some, again, ending, cycling, planting of new seeds. And again, not all these seeds will make it to the top. Okay. Yeah, so we've got that going on. The moon nakshatra, the moon is in Uttara Phalguni. Uttara Phalguni is symbolized by hammock, which is a very contrasting energy to most of the nakshatras I've talked about so far. It's the excuse me, the nakshatra right before Uttara Phalguni is Purva Phalguni, and that's all about like enjoyment of the finer things of life, of socializing, parties, traveling, like all the goodies. Okay. Uttara Phalguni has some of that, a lot of that, but there's also like this additional element of having some purpose to it. Okay, so not just complete like enjoyment and hedonism and all that, but there's like some goal or ambition, um, sense of purpose to that. Okay. So again, the moon is in this nakshatra. So again, because of the two malefics on it, Saturn and Sun, I would say that there's like an ending to this public enjoyment. Okay. So, and some, again, if this was like a country, if this was, organization, because again, the ninth house represents government organization. This could also be the ending of public support for a government or organization. Okay. The Sun Nakshatra we've talked about, Purva Bhadrapada. So again, I'm saying like here an end of authority on some level. Okay. Now, again, to provide a little bit of context, I mentioned a little bit. So Saturn is going to be transiting in Pisces the 29th of March, so a couple weeks after this, during the solar eclipse that's happening. And Jupiter is transiting to Gemini, okay, on 14th of May. So that's actually going to be nice because Jupiter's coming out of this, at least for the Sagittarius Lugna, or whatever Sagittarius, signifies in your chart. Jupiter's coming out of the sixth house of acute issues, and it's going to be in the seventh house where it's aspecting its own sign. That's going to bring some strength to the Lugna. It's going to probably bring some rejuvenative energy. The only thing, though, is that when Saturn transits to Pisces, it has a different aspects. Okay, so you can visualize Saturn moving into Pisces. Saturn will be aspecting the sixth house of acute issues. It'll be aspecting the 10th house of day-to-day activities and work. It'll also be aspecting the Lugna. Okay. So Saturn basically is going to be, again, this planet which is in obstacles, delays, destruction planet in Purva Bhadrapada. And it's going to be in Purva Bhadrapada during, I think the rest of March, maybe through April. Even when it's in Pisces, because Purva Bhadrapada overlap Aquarius and Pisces. You're going to have a Lagna, right, a rising sign, in Mula, destruction energy, with Saturn, a destructive planet, in a destructive nakshatra aspecting as well. There is going to be a lot of turnover for Sagittarius. Okay. Again, once Jupiter comes in January, or not January, once Jupiter transits to Gemini in May, okay, which is about a month, 6 weeks after Saturn does. So Saturn's going to hit the Lagna first, is going to hit Sagittarius first, and then Jupiter's going to come in here and provide some protection. Okay. Now Jupiter's going to be in Gemini. It only transits every year. Okay, so Jupiter will be protecting Sagittarius to some degree, not entirely, mostly inanimate objects. Okay, for about a year. But Saturn will be aspecting Sagittarius for 2.5 years because Saturn's the slowest planet. Okay. So at least for the next year, we're going to have this toggling back and forth, okay, or integration of highs and lows, okay, because we have the great benefic and the great malefic, Jupiter and Saturn, on Sagittarius. Okay. The other thing is right before Jupiter transits into Gemini, Saturn is going to be in Pisces, which is ruled by Jupiter. It's going to be aspecting Jupiter, and it's going to be aspecting Sagittarius simultaneously. So Saturn will be aspecting both Jupiter and the two houses it owns, Sagittarius and Pisces. So the 6 weeks between Saturn transiting and Jupiter transiting, they might be pretty tough, frankly. Okay. Now, in addition to that, so this is unusual, is that we're having all the slow-moving planets transit within about 6 weeks of each other. So Saturn's going to transit first on March 29th, then Jupiter's transiting to Gemini on May 14th, and then a few days later, Rahu and Ketu, which only transit every year and a half, they're transiting on 18th of May. So they're going to be switching from the Pisces-Virgo axis to the Aquarius, Leo axis. So again, when we have all the slow-moving planets shifting like that, it means essentially that because these planets are slow moving, they have usually long-term deep effects. And so essentially the game board is changing for all of us. Okay. So yeah, so there are big changes coming for sure. Again, but there's new cycles as well. Okay. There may be outwardly, especially when Saturn comes back online, there may be quite a bit of changes, that sort of thing. But again, this mula energy can be, how do I say, there is hope, even though, with mula, there's a goddess or deity associated with mula is Kali, is a form of Kali, Nutri. Okay, Nutri. And again, Kali is the goddess of death and destruction. So it all sounds very, gloom and doom. I can understand that. But again, whenever we're planting a seed, right, it's like there's some hope there. There's some potential to grow into something big and great and nourishing. But the other thing about farming, and I come from actually a long line of farmers, is that in the end, no matter what we do, like we can plant the seed, we can water it, we can, I don't know, fertilize it or whatever. But at the end of the day, we still have to give that up. We still have to, because the only thing that really makes the seed grow is something higher than ourselves. Okay, but our job is just to show up and keep farming, show up and keep planting, show up and keep turning the earth over, show up and keep watering, that sort of thing. Doing our best, but at the same time, it's not fully up to us. And I think that's, an important message coming from this time, because it looks like a challenging time is coming. Cool. The other thing that's happening on this day is that it's actually Holi. Again, it's a big Indian holiday. Yeah, Holi, I think a lot of people know Holi a little bit more these days about, it's like the festival of color, and people wear white clothes and they throw different colored powders on each other and that sort of thing. It's kind of fun. And, all the colors are very nice for springtime and all this kind of thing. But a lot of people don't know that, like, part of Holi is that the deeper part of Holi, kind of like seed. The seed of Holi is that before you go out there and throw color on people, is that, you spend time, forgiving, others, yourself, whatever. You're basically releasing negative energy from the past to clear the slate so that you can wear white. It's like you make your life white. You make your life a blank canvas so that the new bright colors can paint a new picture for you. Okay. So anyway, that's a little bit of the background. Now I'm going to go through a little bit of a history lesson, astrological history lesson, and then I will go through the chart house by house for those of you who are, used to me doing the new and full moon videos every month. I will be going through that. But first, I just again wanted to add a little bit of context and history. Okay, so hold on a second. Okay, so on the left here is all the stuff I've talked about so far about the eclipse chart. Now, if you want to go, I do have, again, after the next few slides, of some historical moments in time that I was going to, again, just use as a kind of embodiment of some of the eclipse energies coming up. You can skip ahead to when I go through house by house with the eclipse chart. Okay, but if you're up for it, here's some astrological history. Okay. So on the right here, I have a chart for the Buttonwood Agreement. Okay, so now you may not have heard of it. I never heard of it before. What I was looking for is I was looking for charts that had a Sagittarius rising. Okay, so we could kind of see, for that, person or place or moment in time, you know, uh, how they might be affected right now. Now, the Buttonwood Agreement happened May 17th, 1792 in New York City. Okay, so what is it? Well, the Buttonwood Agreement was the basically founding period for the New York Stock Exchange. Okay, so what happened was there was some, you know, public panic going on about that time because the stock market had dipped or tanked or something. So there was a lot of public unrest about it. And so what happened was, as a response to that time, that public panic about finances, is that 24 prominent financial people came together on Wall Street, which is, again, still famous for finance, and they signed an agreement called the Buttonwood Agreement, where they essentially agreed to a certain minimum fee and the sort of thing of making transactions happen. So essentially, this was the very seed start. Again, we're talking about moolah, right? Um, uh, Planting the seed for what is now the biggest stock exchange in the world. Okay. So again, this happened just a few years after the beginning of the United States itself. So the other thing, so somehow this came across, and I think I was just kind of looking at charts or whatever, and I don't have a specific birth time for this. This is just based on the day. But the thing is that when I oriented it to Sagittarius, you can see Rahu and Ketu are again in on the Pisces Virgo axis. Okay, they're switched and they have similar energies, some differences, but some. So basically, there was some similarity here. The other thing is that you can see, where is it? Moon is there. Okay. And you can also see, Saturn and Venus not too far away. And the other thing is, um, I was thinking about like Sagittarius, like since we're talking about, the United States here, or at least we're pointing that direction. Sagittarius, so the United States birth chart is a Scorpio rising. Okay. That means Sagittarius is a sign after Scorpio. That means Sagittarius represents the second house for the United States. The second house for any chart represents family, represents inner circle, represents speech. It also represents assets. Okay. So it's a big money house. And the thing is, assets, they can be like, cars and furniture and things like that. But especially when you have a big financial portfolio, that's also considered an asset. Okay. So basically what I did was I took this day, 17th May 1792, New York City, this chart, which again, and I oriented it to Sagittarius so that we could analyze the Sagittarius. Basically what we're looking at is the second house of assets for the United States. And that's what we'll be looking at for the next few slides, okay, at different points in time. So, yeah, the other thing to know is that on this day, 17th of May, 1792, the United States was in its Rahu Dasha. So this Rahu was very active. Now, again, Rahu has an energy of hidden, unexpected events. The other thing is Rahu symbolizes ambition, and it's right here in this chart, the Buttonwood Agreement chart, in the 10th house of daily activity. So there's some, and the other thing is it's in Virgo. So I just, again, I posted recently, last week, a few days ago, a video on Virgo. And Virgo is all about, like, it's a dual earth sign. So it's all about, like, getting things in order, okay, getting things streamlined. And so that's essentially what these 24 people did, okay, was trying to, like, streamline things because everything was just sort of like, wild and woolly in terms of people getting ripped off by various financial consultants or whatever. Okay. So the other thing is the sub period here, the book D was moon. So again, the moon here is again Sunday. It's in the last degree of Pisces. And not only is it Sunday, but it's actually Gandanta, which is even more unstable because at a Gandanta point, not only is it Sunday, so we're crossing signs, we're also crossing um, nakshatras as well. So it's a dual instability here. Okay. And moon is on the Rahu Ketu axis. So Rahu and Ketu on their own represent things like mental health illness and illusion, delusion, confusion, that sort of thing, especially when we have the mind represented by the moon or Mercury on the Rahu Ketu axis, even more so. And you can see with the eclipse coming up in the chart on the left is that, basically this Rahu Ketu eclipse thing going on is going to involve Mercury and Moon. So there's a lot of mental and emotional stress here. Also, Venus is involved. Venus and Moon are the two emotional planets. Okay. So how is this Buttonwood Agreement chart on the right similar? Like, what's similar to it to the eclipse chart that we have on the left here? Well, we have a debilitated Saturn in Aries. Okay. So we don't have, so we actually have that energy in the lunar eclipse chart on the left because Saturn aspects 3 houses away. So we do, even though Saturn planet is not in Aries, we do have Saturnian energy in Aries, and Saturn is debilitated in Aries. Okay. The other thing is that Saturn is on Venus and it's on Jupiter. Okay, so and Venus and Jupiter are the two finance planets, and they're also the two diplomatic planets and that sort of thing. So especially once Saturn slips into Pisces at the end of the month, there's going to be similar energies here. Okay. So that can be a slowing down again or restructuring because Saturn represents restructuring of finances. Okay. And the thing is, the 5th house represents counseling. So there's a restructuring of counseling, financial counseling, but also there's a restructuring of public financing because these planets are all involved in the 11th house of clubs, group society, also income, also gambling, which is, again, investing in stocks and is basically a way of gambling. You don't know for sure. You don't have a guaranteed payout, right? You might lose your money, in fact. Now, what's interesting about this Buttonwood Agreement, okay, also, so you can see the Saturn's debilitated in the 5th house. Venus is there as well. Jupiter's aspecting there. Okay, so this is again restructuring financial advice. But then if we look at the 11th house, the 11th house is astoundingly strong. We have Jupiter there, retrograde. Jupiter again is in the 1st degree. So it's a little bit unstable, okay? But it's retrograde, meaning that there's going to be strength with Jupiter. Venus is aspecting the 11th house. The 11th house is owned by Venus. So Venus is going to be super strong in the 11th house of, again, income, clubs, groups, societies, gambling. Saturn, even though it's debilitated in Aries, it's exalted in Libra, which again is the 11th house. So you're going to have an exalted Saturn, meaning structure, Okay. And Saturn is in a nakshatra called Ashwini. So Ashwini is symbolized by the two Kumara twins, which are the celestial healers. So this is about rescuing structure for financial advisement as well as public investing. Okay. Venus is in what is it? The Bharani nakshatra. Bharani is symbolized by a womb. So again, cycles of birth and death. So especially with Venus, this is going to be birthing a new financial structure. And Jupiter is in a nakshatra called Chitra. It's amazing. Chitra is symbolized by a gemstone, like a cut gemstone. Okay. So this is like this 11th house of basically clubs, group society, income, and gambling and enjoyment. It's super, super strong. So this Buttonwood Agreement, like these 24 people that got together on Wall Street back in the day, picked an extraordinary moment, okay, to essentially plant the seed for our New York Stock Exchange, okay, from an astrological point of view. Okay. So let me just go through my notes here, but that's the crux of this chart. So yeah, so this fifth house stuff with Saturn. So this is like restructuring bad financial advice. Um, Rahu and Ketu Rahu and Ketu on the Pisces Virgo axis plus so again, dual emotional tangible disruption here. Public panic essentially. Mars and Ketu, that's another thing that's similar to the eclipse chart. Mars and Ketu. So Mars is aspecting the fourth house of home, family, um, property, and K2 is there as well. So when you get Mars and K2 together, that can be a very explosive energy because Mars and K2 are both erratic planets. K2 even more so. K2 is like an exaggerated Mars because K2 has this hidden, unexpected energy, and Mars, has this like kind of erratic quality, even like through the sky. It's patterned through the sky. So when you get those two together, this is like explosive, okay, energy. And so, again, this could be like preventing, right, this like loss of assets, and essentially, okay, and instability, like past instabilities, that sort of thing. So that's essentially what this, Buttonwood Agreement was about. I talked about the 11th house. Yeah, so basically, this chart's showing big, big money because of the 11th house, gambling, and also, again, a restoring structure. So yeah, 24 people came together. It's on 68 Wall Street. So if you ever visit, you can go to specifically 68 Wall Street in New York and see where this is all done, see where they signed the document. But essentially, the birth of New York Stock Exchange, organized trading, and essentially what it created too was a central market or club at fixed prices. Okay, and essentially was a response to a public financial panic. Okay, so that's a Buttonwood Agreement. Okay, and again, we're talking since we're looking at both the eclipse chart and the Buttonwood Agreement as the Sagittarius, which is the second house for the United States of assets. You can see how the Buttonwood Agreement day was like tremendous. Okay, and you can see also the differences. Okay, between 14th of March this year and whatever 17th of May, 1792. So on the next slide, we have another moment in time related to the New York Stock Exchange. So this moment in time, so again, all the same stuff on the left. On the right, we have the formation of the New York Stock and Exchange Board, or NYSE. So this happened March 8th, 1917. I don't have an exact birth time. Again, this is in New York City, USA. Since I don't have a birth time, I also oriented this chart to Sagittarius, so we can look at essentially the second house for the United States, which again is about assets and finance. So this chart is similar to the eclipse chart because, look, Saturn and Sun are in Aquarius, like it is now. Okay. So Sun is in Purva Bhadrapada, so there is like a change going on with the government. Saturn is not in Purva Bhadrapada. Saturn is in Let's see, 1, 2, 4, 30. Hold on, 3. I believe it's in. Oh, hold on, I'm blanking on it for a moment. Saturn is not in Purvadropada. It's in. Is it in Shravana? No, Saturn is in Shatabisha. Okay, Shatabisha is translated as 100 healers, that nakshatra. So this is things that are potentially difficult to heal or ameliorate. Okay, but still not quite as bad as the Purvadropada in terms of flames and destruction, but edging that way. Okay, and you can see Saturn and Sun again in Aquarius. Okay, so there's also a change in leadership here. Okay, Saturn is again aspecting the same houses. So the fifth house of Aries, the ninth house of Leo, and the 12th house of Scorpio. Okay, so so again, Venus and Saturn again in Aries, kind of like the Buttonwood Agreement time. So this is like creating new structure of, because Venus is the worldly counselor. There's some issues with worldly counseling here and potentially financial counseling. The other thing is that you can see with Rahu and Ketu and Moon in the 6th and 8th houses, the 6th house again relates to acute issues. The 12th house relates to expenditures and losses. It also relates to international trade, like exports, imports, that sort of thing. So we've got Saturn restructuring, Venus, so counseling in the 5th house, government, this is government regulations because they had to get government approval this time around. They couldn't just be like 24 guys showing up and deciding for themselves, planting the seed. They had to get government structure, approval here. But also, Saturn is restructuring international trade, okay, by putting in these different, new agreements or rules and regulations essentially for the New York Stock Exchange. Okay. The other thing is this, K2 Rahu Moon again, public panic and things like that. Okay. So in Jupiter, you can see this is like has gone to the 12th house of losses and expenditures. This is like trying to prevent public panic from financial losses here for the whole country. Yeah. So again, protecting from worry of losses. Okay, and this again was this is when they adopted, new or formal constitution, rules, and structure for the stock market. Now, again, today, New York Stock Exchange is the largest stock exchange in the world. $25 trillion are managed as of July 2024. And 58% of Americans have some investment related to the stock market through stocks, mutual funds, or even their retirement accounts. Okay, so, most of the country in some way or another is invested in the stock market. So if we're seeing some kind of hiccup here in the stock market, most people are going to be affected in the United States. Okay, so I think we've got one more moment of time, but just so you can see that, like again, this March 1917 moment for the New York Stock Exchange has some restructuring element to it. So, that's something we can kind of expect. Okay, so this is another moment in time related to the stock exchange, New York Stock Exchange. This is Black Tuesday. This is when there's the largest crash of the New York Stock Exchange, and this was in 1929. So this date was specifically October 29th, 1929. I don't have an exact time here. This is actually kind of, the stock market was actually sliding for the last few days. Got a pretty big hit the Thursday before, and this was like the last big hit before it really nosedived. But again, what I've done is I've oriented this Black Tuesday chart to Sagittarius. Okay, and everything on the left again is the same as on the previous slides. So again, Sagittarius rising, we're talking about the second house of assets and finance for the United States. The Dasha period at this time with Jupiter Rahu. So again, we're going to pick up Jupiter energy again and Rahu ambition energy again. So that's what's also interesting is Rahu keeps running through. these charts. If you've seen when I've talked about the United States chart in different occasions, different videos, Rahu was one of the starting planetary energies for the United States as the birth of the country. And Rahu sits in the ninth house of government and authority. So, and we're currently running Rahu. And the thing is, Rahu is with Mercury. So, Mercury generally represents like a logical, analytical mind and decision making and stuff like that. But with Rahu, it's going to be like the not making, necessarily clear, sound decisions. And that again is affecting the ninth house for the United States, not these charts, but the ninth house of government authority for the United States. Okay. So, the other thing, okay, is that this Virgo here. So what you can see is you can see Mercury, Venus, Moon on in Virgo, and they're aspecting Pisces. So we're going to have Mercury, Venus, Moon, basic energy on Pisces Virgo axis, very similar to the eclipse that's coming up. And look, we have Jupiter again back in Taurus. Okay, so that's also similar. The other thing is we have Saturn here in Sagittarius. And as I mentioned, Saturn is going to move from Aquarius to Pisces during the next eclipse, March 29th, and from the position of Pisces will be aspecting into Sagittarius. So essentially what we've got during this Black Tuesday moment is we have Saturn, energy on Sagittarius. Jupiter is an the acute troubles house of sixth house. Jupiter will be moving into Gemini, okay, like in this Black Tuesday chart. But the thing is, Jupiter's retrograde here. So before Jupiter slips into Gemini, like in 6 weeks, like it will do, in with the eclipse chart. And again, when Jupiter slips into Gemini, it should provide some strengthens Sagittarius, okay? But in this Black Tuesday chart, it's going retrograde. So Jupiter's going to go backwards, not going to go into Jupiter in like a month, okay? Like you might expect if it wasn't retrograde. Jupiter's going to backtrack and then go into Jupiter or go into Gemini. And the thing is, I was looking at it, Jupiter did not. So this Black Tuesday happened end of October 1929, and Jupiter did not move into Gemini until May of 1930. That means it had what, 7 months, okay, between Jupiter coming into Gemini to provide some sort of protection or strength to as Sagittarius. So what is it? 7 months of Jupiter coming in here and helping out Sagittarius is a big change from 6 weeks, which is what we've got going on here with the lunar eclipse. Okay. So what that means is this Black Tuesday, like again, this is the biggest crash of New York Stock Exchange, which ended up creating a depression. But the stock exchange was languishing for months and months before there was any hiccup compared to the current eclipse time. Okay, which again, it looks like, well, we're already seeing some signs that, the stock exchange is, rumbling. So it might dip, but again, the good news here, if there is any, is that it should be a much quicker recovery or road to recovery than the Black Tuesday. Okay, so the other thing is that this Mercury, Venus, Moon in Virgo here, this is Virgo for the United States is the 11th house of income groups. And again, gambling again. Okay. So the thing is so I have like a kind of this Saturn in the third house here that's in like the circle of dashes. That's the, just to compare. Okay. Um, when Saturn is in Sagittarius, it will aspect into Aquarius, which is similar. But this purple curved arrow, okay, just imagine Saturn shifting it's almost like an overlay, okay, like an overlay of, or the directionality of the current planets or transits. So when Sagittarius moves into Pisces, you're going to aspect back into Sagittarius. But when Saturn is in Pisces, you're also going to get an aspect onto Virgo. which again, in this chart is the 10th house of daily activity and work, career, reputation. But for the United States chart, Virgo represents the 11th house of, again, clubs, group society, income, and finance. So when Saturn moves into a Pisces position, it's going to slow down the second house of finance and assets and, again, public investments. Okay. So let's see. The other thing that's interesting, so not just the planets and how similar the planets are for this Black Tuesday. And again, there's big differences. And I think the biggest positive difference is that it's not going to take so long, 7 months, for Jupiter to move into Gemini. Okay, there should be a faster bounce back if there's a fairly big dip. Okay. Um, but the other thing that's similar is that the nakshatra is here. So like the current lunar eclipse chart, the rising sign, the Lugna nakshatra is Mula, right? That bunch of roots tied together, again, planting, like, but precarious, like planting the seed, but not knowing whether the seed's going to make it to the top of the soil. Saturn here, okay, is in Mula. So it's going to bring out more of that destructive energy. Okay, we don't have that, so that's less virulent. But the thing is, Saturn's not in Mula, but Saturn's in Purva, which is cremation, fire. So the nakshatra is the nakshatra that Saturn is in, whether it's the current lunar eclipse chart or the Black Tuesday chart, is pretty, hardcore. And again, just transformative, destructive, that sort of thing. Okay. Um, So either way, the Purvabhadrata or the Mula, they both represent transformation. Okay, and especially physical transformation, but also, potentially spiritual transformation as well. Because right after Purvabhadrata is Uttara. Uttara also is symbolized by a funeral pyre, but the back legs of a funeral pyre. So this is like, that energy is more like taking a step back, being a little bit more objective, like, surrendering to the moment of transformation, where there's some grace involved. Okay. Um, Yeah, so let me just see what else is different here. Oh, another big difference in these charts. So actually, if you compare the Black Tuesday chart on the right here with the previous slide of the Buttonwood Agreement, look at the difference of like the 11th house here. Okay, so in the Buttonwood Agreement, we had Jupiter and Chitra aspected by Venus in its own sign, and Venus was in Bharani, aspected by Saturn and exaltation sign, which was a massively strong 11th house of, again, clubs, group, society, income, and gambling. And now we've got the opposite here. We've got Mars, KT, Suns, 3 fire planets. Okay, all in this 11th house. This is like the exact opposite of public investing. This is like a explosive energy. Moss. Okay. Um, yeah, so that's another major difference between, again, like just comparing Black Tuesday of 1929 with the Buttonwood Agreement and whatever, 92. Huge differences between, again, the start of the New York Stock Exchange and this particular day. But you can see also the big difference between Black Tuesday and this lunar eclipse is that the recovery time after recovery is going to be much quicker. If, again, there is a dip, okay, which there might be. Okay. So, what else? Okay, so now the chart itself. So that was all the kind of financial history of the New York Stock Exchange. Now I'm going to go through house by house. So starting at the Lugna, top of the chart, we have Sagittarius or Danu, a dual fire sign, Agni. So fire signs all about activity, but again, dual activity. So it's kind of like hedging your bets. You could even, since we're talking about finance, could be hedging your bets, like which way do we go here? And again, Jupiter is in the 6th house, so it's kind of like trying to figure out like what actions to take, especially regarding Mula. energy. So what seeds are we going to plant, moving forward? And then this dual fire sign is aspected by a fire planet, Mars. Okay, so again, there's like even more of a drive here. And Mars is Jupiter's, or Sagittarius is a friend sign from Mars. So Mars does pretty well. The thing is, Mars is stuck in, Gemini, sitting in Gemini where it's an enemy sign. So again, the problem here is like deciding which way to go before the action happens. So it's like an internal like decision that needs to happen first before the whichever action taken is actually taken. And Mars is sitting in a nakshatra called Purnima, which is symbolized by a quiver of arrows. It's like that box that kind of hangs on your back, and you pull the arrows out and string them on your bow and shoot them off. So the energy of Purnima is this idea of like having a home base, like the box of arrows on the back, and shooting them out and coming back. So there's a cycling energy that happens, but also this energy of like home and going out and coming back. So we're picking up this kind of home energy, especially because we're also looking at home energy in fourth house. Okay, so again, I think there's this like real impetus to save home on, large major assets like property and sort of thing. Um, what else? So there can be like literally commuting, but there's this fighting, transformative energy. Also, I would say survival mode. Um, Trying to again attack again once some decision is made. The Lugnatia, the ruling planet for the chart, is Jupiter. It's in Rohini. So Jupiter, kind of like in that Buttonwood Agreement where Jupiter was in Chitra. Chitra is symbolized by a gemstone. So that literally represents both structure but also wealth. Rohini is considered to be the most kind of luscious, beautiful, attractive, seductive nakshatra. So there's a lot of beauty and nice comfort, luxury, y- being well off and comfortable, and flowers and nice things. Energy associated with Rohini. So Jupiter's there. Excuse me. Um, luckily again, Jupiter's in Parivartan in exchange of houses with Venus, so that'll bring some more strength. But the thing is, we have Ketu aspecting from the 10th house. So Ketu is going to throw a monkey wrench into this Venus-Jupiter situation that we have going on in the 6th house. 6th house not only represents enemies, but also represents daily activity and scheduled routines. So when we have Venus and Jupiter there, that's like you can think of it as like a fairly cushy lifestyle. But the thing is, Venus, which is the ruling planet for the 6th house, and Venus itself, and Venus is in Uttara Phalguni. Okay. So this is the back legs of the funeral pyre. So this is like transformation, destruction, but again, taking a step back and surrendering to that. Okay. So you can see that there's some transformation going on, and then K2 again is like throwing like a monkey wrench or, you know, like hard left turn into this, otherwise fairly cushy, not the cushiest, but we have two very strong Uh, well, at least Venus is very strong in this chart because it's in its exaltation position and it's changing into its own house. But it's in a nakshatra of transformation and turning over. So looks like there might be a change in lifestyle here. Um, and let's see. This K2 in this chart is in Uttara Phalguni, which again is this symbol of a hammock, but of enjoyment of finer things. So we're getting more of that in the 6th house. But again, K2 can be like a separationist, like a sudden change in enjoying the finer things of life. Also, again, that energy of having like some kind of purpose. Like it's all nice and fine, to enjoy like a lavish lifestyle, but maybe too, like sometimes things can get lost where, all the goodies can distract you from, right, your deeper life purpose potentially. So that might be again if things are shifting and changing in terms of level of wealth, assets, and that sort of thing. it gets people into the mode of like deciding like what's truly valuable and important, not just like monetary value, but in their life. If they have to downsize or, downgrade their lavish lifestyle or something, um, what's going to be deeply fulfilling, right? That might be what's on the table here. But it does seem like there's an attempt here to stay above the fray because you have, again, Jupiter and Venus in the fourth house. So there's some, again, Rahu, there's some ambition here to maintain the fourth house. I mean, that's natural. Um, but again, there may not be that many choices, okay, depending on how things go here for all of us. So, in this chart, we had the Pravraja Yoga. We also have a Malavya Yoga. That's Venus exalted in its own sign. It also has Digbala, so it's a very strong Venus here. Venus is a planet representing, again, the finer things of life, social grace, socializing, traveling, luxury items, fine food, loved ones, pets, all the goodies, in life. And but Venus being so strong, this is a Panchamaha Purush Yoga, so this is a source of strength here. Is the heart, okay? Venus can also represent the heart and loved ones, and the fourth house is family and family line. So it might be like again, if the edges are getting frayed here because there's some big change. It's kind of like focusing on family, among other things, family, home, family line, happiness. Fourth house is also happiness. Okay. Um, we also have a Subhaveshi solar yoga here. We have two benefic true planets in the second house from Sun. That's going to bring like a kind of a valiance or a virtuous energy here to Sun type things. So leadership, personal leadership as well as career, reputation, soul path, that sort of thing. So that's nice that even though Sun is compromised because it's Sunday and it's with a very strong combust malefic, um, it's still helpful, um, to have that support of the Sun with the Venus and Mercury second house from the Sun. So these yogas will bring focus. Oh, there's also a Pravraja yoga. Did I put that? Yeah, Pravraja, I didn't mention. Pravraja yoga is that Rahu, Venus, and Mercury, three planets together in the fourth house. So that gives a life focus as well, besides Rahu bringing ambition. So focus, these yogas will bring focus, creativity, because Venus also represents art, creativity, valiance, honor. But I would also say some difficulty in relationships because there's also Mangalic yoga here. So that's Mars in the seventh house. Mars can bring erratic energy to seventh house issues such as spouse like partner, and business relationships. Okay, so the Chidragrahas in this chart, Chidragrahas are planets of vulnerability. So you can think of this as like Achilles heel or like a sensitive spot, that sort of thing. Interestingly, we have Jupiter twice and Sun twice, which were running those planets. So again, Jupiter represents children, education, finance, spirituality. Sun represents authority, father. So again, leadership of these things, sensitive spots. Okay, and then even more like we keep, again, like even though when I first do, so the way I do these charts is I just do this kind of intro part on the left for myself, okay, before I, offer this to anybody, through one of these public videos or whatever. And that gives me a vibe for the chart. And then when I start looking more deeply, more often than not, um, I just get more confirmation. So the fact that Jupiter and Sun are both double Chitragrahas, that can be like Chitragrahas can even represent things like injuries, accidents, surgeries, planets where we've been hit, okay, like in one way, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, whatever. And so you're seeing like we're getting a hit of authority and also a hit of Jupiterian things, education, finance, spirituality, okay? So all of these changes, again, if there is potentially like a fairly big financial dip, at least in the United States, that's going to affect, like I mentioned, a lot of people. Um, And it's already affecting a lot of people. Like we already, we have a lot of changes going on in the government right now. Like there's massive layoffs going on, a lot of people getting laid off. Most of I'm a physician, a naturopathic physician. So, every person I meet basically coming to the office is talking about how all these layoffs, and they're not only layoffs, but um, finances are being withheld from different projects. They're being held from universities. Um, yeah, like not just people showing up in my office. Everybody's like affected by this so far. Um, and they don't know which way to go because they don't know how things are going to play out or how soon money might show up again or if money will show up again. There's a lot of unknowns. So people can't, don't feel like they can move forward or don't know which way to go, causing a lot of illusion, confusion, delusion, like an eclipse would bring, especially when, Mercury's involved as well. Um, but like even my neighbors yesterday, I was walking with my dog and I met a couple of my neighbors. And it was interesting to me because she was telling me the husband has hip necrosis, which he's not even limping. I was kind of surprised by that. But hip necrosis would potentially be this like ninth house here, because Saturn, a combo Saturn is like Saturn medically represents like the neuromuscular junction, um, and Sun represents bones. Okay. And the ninth house represents like the hips. So even though he wasn't limping, I would suspect with hip necrosis, he'd be limping pretty bad, but he was walking pretty normally. I don't know if he was taking some. I'm guessing some pretty strong pain meds so he could walk. But this this deep destruction, Saturn and Sun, on the funeral pyre, Purva Drapada aspecting the ninth house. Um, and I don't know what house it is for him, but maybe it's like if it's his hip, it's probably 7, 8, or 9. So those are all like hip and pelvis, organs. Um, yeah, this is a destruction of nerve, muscle, and bones here when he has a surgery. So he's going to have surgery. And then she was telling me she's a physical therapist. And she was telling me she's probably going to get laid off because a lot of their funding is public money. So she's like mentally dealing with it because she hasn't actually been laid off yet. But it's interesting to me, that here I am just walking my dog and these two people are complaining about things that are related to this chart here. So anyway, so yeah, so those are the chitta grahas. So anyway, so Sun could like for this guy, my neighbor, Sun could be like surgery of bones, like his hip and spine, right? Because that's, the hips, I mean, they're basically the base of the spine, essentially. So, yeah, that was interesting. And then I have here the yogi, aviyogi, duplicate yogi info. So, yogi and duplicate yogi represent planets that can bring wealth. And aviyogi is a planet that can bring dearth, so the opposite of wealth. So, you can see yogi is Jupiter, so finance. And you can see Jupiter is again the ruling planet for the chart, and it's in the sixth house of accused issues. At least Jupiter's not in the eighth house. I mean, that would be worse, right? I mean, because the eighth house is also a negative house, but the eighth house is a long-term chronic, more virulent, deeper chronic issues. So that's also a positive as well. The Abhiyogi is the Sun. So again, there's some, this unstable government authority, is bringing some level of dearth here. And then the duplicate yogi is Mars. So that's also nice because that also means the yogi being Jupiter, and also being the lugnation, ruling planet for the chart. That means the first house has both yogi energy and duplicate yogi because Mars is aspecting there. That's going to help bring back, provide something, to the first house. The other thing is Mars and Jupiter also aspecting the second house in this eclipse chart of, again, assets. So that's also nice to see. Okay. Yeah. So again, just even going a little bit deeper into the lugna here, I'm just getting more and more. Again, it just keeps pointing me to like finance, where Jupiter could potentially point me to spirituality, and I don't think it's not. I think the thing is like right now it's just the top of the mind stuff is more like finance and stuff like that. So then the second house lord is a Kamba Swa Bhavat Bhavam Saturn. So Bhavat Bhavam is like in this case, the second house lord has gone two houses away to the third house. This means that there's going to be like one like communication after another, or like one asset after another that's on this funeral pyre. Okay, so this is like, one, like in the government, like they're laying off thousands of people at a time. To me, like you know, um, one email, one writing, one asset or another that's like down the drain, or one email saying, okay, you're laid off or whatever. There's a lot of this going on right now. Okay. Um, so, potentially a lot of bad talk, bad news, um, that sort of thing. Okay. Because Jupiter's aspect in the second house here, but the second house is Capricorn. Jupiter's debilitating Capricorn. Okay, so in the second house, you have Ketu and Mars. So again, this explosive energy, and Mars and Jupiter's aspecting there. Jupiter can only do so much because it's not super strong. It's in the sixth house, and a negative house, and then again, it's debilitated. So it's like a little bit of like a cushion here in the second house of oral communication, family, inner circle. So a lot of chaos going on here, assets. Yeah, unfortunately. So all this together, it looks like assets going down the drain or drying up. Um, but the thing is, like, there's some kind of like invisible energy. So again, a lot of this may not actually be tangible. It might just be um, like again, an email rather than like a snail mail tangible letter. This could also be like family, assets that you can't see. So like assets you can't see would be like stock market money. You get a balance sheet, but it's not like you can count the coins or count the stacks of cash or something like that and like hide it under your bed, like they used to do, right? Or some people still do. Also explosive speech. So a lot of people upset, talking about, destructive things going on here. This might even be threatening legal action, frankly. If they can't, because a lot of this too is like how much of this is legal, like they're even challenging like the government and stuff like that for all the stuff that's going on. So also shuffling of assets, I would say, like people moving stuff around because they don't know how things are going to go, so they might be going into, rather than investing, bull type position like that first image I had on the first slide. They're going into a bear protective energy, so they're probably shuffling assets around. And also, this could be distance from family, like literally not seeing people because people are busy, going into protective mode. Looks like. Okay, then the third house here, third house lord is a Saturn with the Sunday Sun, so unstable, destructive leadership, also distance and siblings, because siblings might be quite worried here, even though outwardly they might be showing some signs of courage, because again, the third house also represents courage. And Sun is a fire sign, shows some courage, but Sun is, wavering here, compromised. So multiple communications, probably a lot of emails going on here. Uh, Outward courage despite internal fear. That Saturn on Purva Drapada, you know, a lot of internal fear. Again, maybe not so much tangible shifting yet, although it will come, especially once Saturn is out of combustion and moves into Pisces. I think that's March 29th. Also difficulties with arm, shoulder, hand. I would see kind of like this guy had hip necrosis going on. It's Saturn, Sun reflecting into the ninth house, but Saturn, Sun, I would also imagine problems because the third house represents arm, shoulder, hands. And the other thing about this, okay, is that I will talk about the Amshas, subdivisional charts or subzodiacs, to get into even more detail, if you're up for it. But Saturn and Sun, you can see they just almost in the same degree. What that means is when we look at the Amshas, Saturn and Sun are going to be close together or in the same sign in a lot of amshas. So we're going to get this destructive energy, kind of black hole energy, frankly, going through a lot of the sub-zodiacs. Okay, so kind of doubling up, tripling up, quadrupling up on this energy. Like this energy is not just in the main chart, but it's going to be in a lot of the subcharts, as you'll see. Okay, so this is going to be, unfortunately, fairly deep and wide in terms of the changes going on here. Yeah, so the fourth house lord is Jupiter. Again, the fourth house right now is looking decent, I mean, relatively. The Lord is Jupiter. We have an exalted Digbala Venus, but we have a debilitated Mercury, but luckily it's Nietzsche Banga. So Mercury's debilitated here, but because it's with the planet that's exalted in Pisces, that'll bring Mercury up a bit, not completely, but it'll help Mercury out a lot. And Rahu, but the thing is, Venus, Mercury, and Rahu are all in Uttara Phalguni. So again, funeral pyre with objectivity and surrender. Okay. So this is some like ability to contain some rising above the chaos at home, finances, all fourth house is also education. Because the other thing that United States government is doing, like they're trying to dismantle the Department of Education, and nobody knows what that's going to do. They're withholding funds from like Columbia University was in the news the other day. They're withholding like millions of dollars from Columbia University alone. So probably like an example setting. And nobody know. And the other thing is people who are, now is about the time when students are looking to start university in the fall, but they don't know if there's going to be any funding available because a lot of student loans are, managed or given out through the government. So all that's up for grabs, currently, stressing people out. Fourth house is also happiness, mother, mental, emotional, but you're seeing some mental, emotional instability here. The other thing is the fourth house represents like underground. And because we're in Pisces here, this could be like underwater. And the solar eclipse that's coming out at the end of the month, that's actually happening off the east coast of Canada, mostly Canada, some part of the United States. So there could also potentially be some issues, like even not just man-made issues like what we've got going on, but like like potentially natural disasters going on. Yeah. So yeah, as if that wasn't enough. Right? As if that wasn't enough. And the fifth house lord is Mars, but there's an aspect by debilitated Saturn. Fifth house represents children and advice, creativity. So children might be away from home, or there's some upset with kids. Also, bad advice going on here. Yeah, people giving bad advice generally, I think. Also, creative block. Maybe all this like nervous energy is preventing people from focusing on their creative stuff, and also potentially losing a platform. The fifth house represents like a stage, so it may be like people are kind of hiding out a little bit right now, like just bunkering down, you know, getting, bunkering down into their home or trenches or whatever and just staying put, rather than going out, whether it's mentally, emotionally, physically. And on this slide, we have the other houses. So same stuff on the left, notes on the right are with the other half for the other houses. So sixth house lord is Swan Venus. Jupiter's there, aspected by K2. So again, trying to organize things, put, a sudden change in routine or lifestyle. I mentioned some of this. But some of this too is like, trying to figure out like what's really gonna make you happy. If things are changing and shifting, it's like, what do we, and I mentioned this, I think, in my last, was it a full moon or new moon video? Like, if change is coming, um, if the ship is going down, or like in my place where I have like I've had a few fires on the edges of my property where I'm literally sitting on my couch in my living room and I can see the fire and sort of wondering myself like, is my house going to burn down? Should I leave? Should I grab stuff and leave? And then luckily I didn't. It would have been like hugely inconvenient. But what was interesting was the thought process was I was like, well, if I do have to leave, if it's all going to burn down, what's important? Like, what do I grab before I take off? And the only thing that really mattered to me was like my dog, making sure he's okay. But then other than that, I think I would grab my purse and my computer just because they're mostly practical things. And the rest, it would suck. It would be inconvenient. It'd be a process to rebuild, but almost everything else could be replaced. So it was actually a very, in a way, luckily the house didn't burn down, so I didn't have to worry about it in the end. But for a few minutes, just even considering it really helped me clarify what I valued and what was important to me and just like letting the rest go. Almost like this Uttara energy where it's like just letting the soil turn over, like letting things die, letting the cycle happen, rather than trying to fight the wheel. So, the other thing is that if this is a person, so Sagittarians, they may be under the weather or they may be stressed because their ruling planet is in the sixth house. So, whether it's physical, mental, emotional, they might be like staying home, or again, they might just have a cold or flu or something. And the seventh house lord is Mercury. There's Mars there. So again, partner is also focused on work because if the seventh house represents partner, the ruling planet's Mercury, it's gone to their 10th house of work. So, and it's a dual water sign. So it looks like they're really trying to, um, maybe have a couple jobs going on actually. The other thing is for Geminis, this Saturn moving out of Aquarius may be helpful for them financially because Saturn has been aspecting their 11th house of income where it's debilitated for almost 2.5 years now. So Geminis might, once Saturn moves off there, um, that might actually be helpful for income to Geminis. So, not every, again, that's the thing is not every, that's the thing with like even the stock market. I mean, that's where people are like, when we're looking at dual fire signs, like two different actions, some people are going to bet for and some people are going to bet against, right? And some people are going to make a killing off of this market tanking if it does. Okay. Um, it's just like, are you gonna vote, invest for or against, hedge your bets, or what's your position, And that's the big decision that needs to be made here, which way you're gonna go. So, so since Mercury's in Uttara, but again, they're trying to contain the chaos that's going on here. There might be, some spending time apart because Mars, again, this commuting energy is is on the first seven house axis. So both people might be trying to like, do what they can to, work or pay the bills or whatever. It might be a bit touch and go. Also brainstorming here, I could see, because Mars and Gemini, there's going to be a lot of ideas, try to innovative ideas and stuff like that. But again, indecision as so far as to like which way to go. The eighth house lord is this, Sunday moon, an Uttara Phalguni, aspected by an exalted Jupiter. Well, that's kind of nice. Jupiter's going to aspect there from its parivarts in the position. So there's some optimism here despite the shifting sand. And um, again, I think it's switching from more of an aggressive, to a defensive position is what I'm seeing here. But still, like, this is going to bring in some confusion, obsession energy, because again, once Moon slips into Virgo and it's on the Rahu Ketu axis, again, Moon is already unstable because it's Sunday, so that's going to bring instability to the eighth house issues of like deep psychology. And then it's going to be even more so. So even though Jupiter will be providing some optimism here, there's still going to be some turbulence mentally, emotionally. Then the ninth house lord is again Sun, which we know is compromised, Moon, aspected by a combo Saturn. So bringing energy inward, this could literally be the end of a regime or public support of a regime, instability of father, government, religion. We also have like in the news, like the Pope is not doing well. And I looked at his chart. His chart is one of the ones. He's actually Gemini Lugna. So if you flip this chart over, you would get a sense for him. And again, Saturn, he has some sort of respiratory issue going on. Saturn for him, when it slips into Pisces, will be aspecting his fourth house of chest issues. The other thing is for him, the ninth house represents religion and spirituality. And I believe, if I remember correctly, he has Saturn in Aquarius. So Saturn is passing through his natal position. But it could potentially even mean, even if he doesn't, pass away physically, it could there is a possibility, depending on how the next few months go. And I don't know what planets he's running, so that would make a difference. But that might be like why for him there's turmoil going on in the organization, which this Aquarius for him would be his ninth house of, institution, government, religion, that sort of thing. Like there's a lot of uncertainty for the Catholic Church, frankly, because he's ill. So regardless of whether he, recovers or not. But you could see like how it's playing out for the Pope even. But let's see. So unstable father, government, religion. This is also, I think, about getting real and serious because again, the moon was in Maga, which is a very like aggressive kind of prominent leadership energy, and then it went through Uttara Phalguni, which again is like hedonism and enjoyment and luxury, and now it's like you know um, having some purpose to it all, and this we have some explosions going on where Mars and K2 are showing up together, like in Virgo and Capricorn, which are both Earth signs, so tangible things, potentially exploding. But there's also this implosion that's going on with Saturn and Sun. So, and again, Saturn is debilitated in the fifth house of counseling. So it's like not even the leaders know what to do, like whether it's like top of the top or in your organization or whatever. And even parents, again, Sun and Moon represent parents, like parents not knowing know what to do, So a lot of confusion going on here. But the ninth house represents father, government, religion, uh, and that's imploding, it looks like. And then also potentially leg pain surgery, which I mentioned, like my neighbor who's got the hip necrosis going on. That was an example. Then the 10th house here, the Lord is Mercury, K2's there in Uttara Phalguni, aspected by Mars and Jupiter. So what I'm seeing here, if you watch my Virgo video, like Virgo often is about nurturance and medicine and like organizing, bringing order to chaos. So what I'm seeing here, because you have all these benefics like Venus and Mercury and Jupiter aspecting K2, and you have sorry, let me say that again. You have Venus, Mercury, and Jupiter aspecting Virgo. You have Mars and K2 in Virgo. So you have an explosive energy and you have like a saving, charitable energy. It's like two very different directions, two very different energies. What I'm seeing here is triaging in the 10th house of, again, daily activity, reputation, career. It's like, who are we going to save? Who are we going to let go of? Or what are we going to say? What are we going to let go of? What to toss and what to focus on. Okay. Mental, emotional confusion, stress, all of it, especially when moon lines up here in 30 minutes. This is also the sky. So there might be some kind of, again, somewhere in the world, there may be some like explosion in the air, potentially. And not just one, but two, because again, it's a dual Earth sign. Okay. The other thing is we have Mars and Ketu. Mars and Ketu are also lined up in Capricorn, which is a movable Earth sign. So there might be like literal, um, tangible, invisible explosions going on. The 11th house here, the 11th house lord is Venus, which is fairly strong, which is nice. But there's nothing aspecting here. So this might be, again, since Venus is in Uttara Bhadrapada, like salvaging income, coworkers, social support, because those are things that the 11th house represents. Then the 12th house here, the Lord is Mars. And again, Mars is eight houses away from 12th house. So long-term problems and issues with uh, 12th house issues, which is expenditures, losses, and again, foreign trade. Which we're already seeing, like all the trade wars going on just from the United States, and like the blowout that happened between Trump and Zelensky, Ukraine for leaders of the U.S. and Ukraine. I mean, that's a lot of what's showing up as well. So losses, but also the nice thing about the 12th house, it's not all bad. There can be charity involved here. Because it can be losses through, voluntary losses, especially because we have Jupiter represented here. So Jupiter and Venus are both aspecting the 12th house. So there should be a little bit of cushion of like people, that's what you're going to see when you get into like pretty serious situations, right? Is you're going to see the best of people and the worst of people. And that's also a duality going on in this chart. So losses, but charitable. Also investment cycles, turning that over. International trade, especially luxury items, that's going to be all for grabs, I think. So what was interesting too, if you watch my videos, I like to watch movies and stuff, and so I'm on Netflix quite a bit. And there's this new series, a limited series I was watching this week called The Leopard. It's an Italian series, and it's a period piece based in like the mid 1800s of how there was a new Italian kingdom government formed, and it was from the perspective mostly of this wealthy royal Sicilian family. Okay. And how Sicily, that family, particularly in Sicily, was sort of joined up with the mainland of Italy and that sort of thing. Okay, because I guess they were separate. I don't really know Italian history, but that's what it seemed like in this series. Okay, so it was kind of funny when I was looking at this chart and as I analyzing it, I was like, for some reason, I kept thinking about this, leopard series. It's called the Leopard. And I was thinking, this chart reminds me of that series, like because you have this like massively wealthy royal family in Sicily. Like their house was like amazing. It was so beautiful. And I don't usually like go gaga over like big houses and stuff. It's not like really my thing, but I was like, it was just aesthetically so beautiful. I was like, wow. I mean, like not even like a mansion, it was like a palace. Like it was so beautiful, not just big and showy, but like literally just beautiful, like the curves of the stairways and all. Anyway, it was very beautiful, and all the gardens and with the tropical plants because it's a tropical island or whatever. Um, and there's the leopard is the prince who's the father or the patriarch of this family in Sicily. And, wealthy guy, a lot of land, a lot of resources. Not the most up and up guy though, like, because there's some skirmishes between the rebels and whoever as the government is shifting, trading, changing, like this Sun Saturn situation here. That we have in this eclipse chart. And he has a nephew that was fighting with the rebels, and he's going to be executed by firing squad. And basically, the guy in charge of the execution, he's like, well, if you give me a bunch of land, I'll save your nephew. So he does that. Okay. So he's into finagling things too, like using his power and money to, make things, grease the wheels essentially. And he's having an affair, he's having affairs and all this kind of stuff. So, you know, in the beginning of the series, they kind of paint him as like this kind of shady guy. Okay. Like, so the thing is, once the government changes over the next few years, okay, he's invited to step into some senator position with this now united Italy. Okay. So he goes up to Turin, which is the, I guess, capital of or capital of Italy at that time. And he starts, meeting people up there. And then he finds out that, like, his nephew, the one he saved from the firing squad, is involved in government dealings. I don't remember exactly how, but his nephew is trying to put himself in a position to be a ambassador to Paris or France or something. He's trying to get that. He's vying for that position or whatever. And then the leopard prince guy, he finds out that essentially his nephew is essentially pimping out his wife to the French ambassador so that the French ambassador will put him up for the diplomat position in Paris. And then he's like, and the leopard prince guy, who again is no, saint himself, he's not a, is horrified by this, that he would pimp out his wife. And then the guy says, well, my wife wanted me in this position just as much, so she volunteered to do this. So both the nephew and his wife are okay, with them doing this, And even for the leopard guy, like, he can't, and again, he doesn't exactly have the cleanest record himself. Even for him, it's like too much to stomach. So he decides to like not be a part of the Senate or whatever. Right. So anyway, and then he goes home, and then like, people are trying to ask him, oh, the guy who saved his nephew from the firing squad, he says that the land that he got from the prince, the leopard prince guy, is basically been ravaged by bandits or whatever, and he has no way of saving it. So he goes to the leopard guy, is there any way that you could just take the property back? Because this has become a liability for me. And the leopard prince guy says, I can't help you. I don't even have the money to help you. Like, I don't have it, or whatever. And the firing squad leader, he's just like, well, I'm, basically destitute. And he's like, well, we're all becoming destitute. Like, you're just got there first, okay? So even this like, powerful, wealthy Brazilian prince like went through this massive, change of fortune, okay? Like, because it was all up for grabs, okay, during that time. So anyway, I'm thinking, so this, I know it's complicated series, but like I kept thinking about the series as I'm like analyzing this chart, not just for kicks, okay? Just because I was curious. I was like, what was going on at the time? Like really in Italy, like, and so this is the thing. The new Italian kingdom in the mid 1800s for Italy officially changed March 17th, 1861. So I looked on that day, okay, what was going on. On that day, you had Saturn in Leo and Maga. So basically the opposite position, aspecting into Aquarius. Okay. And Sun was in Pisces, Uttara. Okay, meaning Sun had just crossed into Pisces a few days before. So essentially this like leopard series thing, time period um, of the new Italian kingdom happened, okay, when Saturn and Sun were in the same position, like basically creating the same energy on the Aquarius Leo axis. And that blew my mind. I was like, no way. Like I just thought it was so random. I'm like, why do I keep thinking about this leopard series? And I was like, oh, maybe like that was like, again, like for me, like I'm like, there must be some reason why my mind keeps thinking there's some relation between. So there it is. It was literally like a recreation, this Saturn Sun energy, on the again Aquarius Leo axis. So if you want to watch that series, if you're into that kind of stuff, I love those period pieces with the costumes. Like those are all like really fun for me to watch. And I also learned something about history somewhere in the world. So it was a pretty good series, but astrologically, it was also very interesting as well. So, all right, so let's look at the Amsha's subdivisional charts and see what we see there. Okay, so usually I start off with the relationship Amshas, but now I'm starting off with the wealth Amshas because, again, it looks like a lot of this is about money and tangible assets and stuff like that. So let's see. So when you're looking at the subzodiacs or amshas, essentially what you're looking for, and these are created by essentially taking the natal chart and slicing them and dicing each house into smaller pieces and creating a new chart from them. Okay. Now, for the most part, these are analyzed for the Dasha period, so a planetary period, meaning what's going to be active, like what kind of cycles what kind of energies are we moving into and out of? Like, are we moving to a better period or worse period, relatively speaking? Okay. So I have on these slides the Shah period that we're starting off on for the eclipse period. So Sun, Rahu, Jupiter. We're moving into Sun, Rahu, Saturn on, again, March 23rd. Okay. So I've circled the planets that we're running. So I've circled Sun, Rahu, Jupiter, and Saturn. So we can see, like, how things shift. So essentially what we're looking at, because Sun and Rahu are the same, like we're looking at the shifts between Jupiter and Saturn. Now, before I even look at these, subcharts, already just shifting from Jupiter to Saturn, we're moving from great benefic energy to great malefic energy. Okay, that's already telling you something without even really looking at these charts, but we will look through the charts, okay? So on this slide, we have the Chatra Chamsha D4 for assets, and we have the Ekadamsha D11 for income and public support. So first off, Chatra Tamsha D4 is a Vargodama Lagna, meaning that it's the same rising sign as the natal chart. That in and of itself will tell you that this is an important chart, which again, we've already seen multiple times over that a lot of this is about assets. Okay, specifically for the United States, because I went through the New York Stock Exchange, some important dates in the New York Stock Exchange, but, you can see that overall, even if this is a person besides a moment of time, or again, the second house for the United States, assets are important here, okay? Look at this, Saturn, Sun, Jupiter, not well placed, all in the 12th house. Okay, there is a parivartan between Jupiter and Mars, and Rahu is in the 12th house again. So again, there's some protection during Jupiter because Jupiter will activate this Mars-Jupiter parivartan. But during Saturn, no. Okay, Saturn is aspecting the second house, so there'll be a little bit of salvaging there, but you can see Saturn is, aspecting the moon as well. So we're going to go from Jupiterian energy on the moon, which is again optimistic, creative energy, generous energy, to Saturn. So obstacles, delays, skepticism, doubt, fear. Okay. And again, this is all related to assets. Then we have the Ekadamsha D11 for income and public support. That chart, Jupiter's not well placed. The Lugnatia, this is also interesting. As we go through these charts, most of these charts, the Lugnatia is either Jupiter or Saturn. That's also very interesting to me. Okay. And you can also see Sun and Saturn are together in the D4 and the D11, because as I mentioned, since Sun and Saturn are almost within a degree of each other, they're going to travel through these amshas for most of them. Okay. So again, problems with authority, and you can see in the D4, Sun is the ruler of the ninth house of government, authority, religion. So some crisis of losses and crisis there. Okay. Then the D11, Jupiter's not well placed. The Lugnatia is a combus Saturn that's on the moon, and the moon and sun and Venus, also Rahu, Ketu. And Rahu's in the second house. So some, ambition, but confusion about assets and income, because Saturn is aspecting both the second house and 11th house. There will be some protection by Jupiter because Jupiter is aspecting into its own sign in the second house. There's going to be a lot of internal chaos because of Saturn. The other thing about this is that because Saturn is in the 5th house of counseling and advice, you have this combo Saturn that's in Purva Drapada, that energy in the 5th house here. This might be like, frankly, bad advice, okay? Like almost like a scam or scheme or something like that, because on the surface, you won't see this internal destructive energy, okay? And you'll see the sun, but you won't see the moon and you won't see Saturn. So this might be like, when people like just take advantage of other people who are feeling vulnerable or whatever. This is a cautionary energy here, I feel, where it's like, be careful of the advice. This is somebody who should be careful of the advice they're getting about like income, like maybe some, scheme or some new whatever, because deep inside the guts of this thing is not stable. Okay, and actually fairly destructive. So, again, from this D11, I'm getting beware of faulty schemes and scams. That can happen a lot when everything's, off the hook, people are just looking for some way out, but there's some caution here. Then on this chart, we have the Dashamsha D10 for career and Dashamsha D24 for education. In the D10, Jupiter's not well placed, but it is exalted, so that's nice. Jupiter's aspecting into its own sign of the second house, so that's also nice. And Venus is there exalted, so that's, Jupiter's still helpful. Jupiter's also aspecting the sun. Okay. So yeah, especially this Jupiter Venus in the second house. This is like stacking assets during Jupiter. But then when we switch to Saturn, okay, and Saturn is the Lugnatia again. This is where there's going to be slowdown, obstacles, delays of authority, leadership, government. Saturn's also aspecting its own sign in the 12th house of losses, expenditures. Saturn's also aspecting the 4th house of, again, family, home, property, larger assets, physical assets. Saturn's also aspecting the 7th house of independent business. So this is like going from generous mode to frugal mode when we go from Jupiter to Saturn. Also, Saturn's on the moon again, so anxiety, doubt, fear, and then Saturn on the 4th house of happiness, so suppressed happiness. Okay, so challenges with career. Sadamsha D24, education. Again, a Virgo to Malugna. This is also an important chart, subchart here. Sun is not well placed. It's also the 5th house lord, so again, bad advice. So be careful the advice you're getting these days. Saturn aspecting 1st house, that's going to bring it down. And you can see Jupiter is in the 11th house, clubs, group societies, income, gambling. So looks like during the Jupiter period, that would be a pretty good time, especially since the Lord of the 11th house is Venus, and Venus is Swan, the 6th house. This could be like a good time to take out like loans potentially. But you can see Saturn is moving in here pretty fast, and Saturn is aspecting the Lugna, so the whole chart, as well as the 9th house of government, authority, institutions. So whether it's government or school, there are going to be issues there. So loss of education and government administration, even Jupiter in the 11th house could also be public funding. But again, when Saturn starts running, it's going to be less so. Okay. So again, so far, the 4 options I've discussed so far, they're all ruled by Jupiter, Saturn. So again, since we're running sub periods of Jupiter and Saturn, that means not just like single houses within each of these amshas is going to be affected, but the whole chart. You see that? Like some of these charts are going to come forward and, or languish, So that was also very interesting. And again, we have Sun and Saturn in the D10. Sun and Saturn are not in the D24, but again, the D24, that's when you cut slice up each house into 24 pieces and reconfigure a new chart. So the higher the number of the chart, that's when you might get Saturn and Sun splitting up. But these lower number charts, Sun and Saturn, are probably going to be together for most of them. Okay, then we have relationships. So we have the Navamsha D9 for spouse partnerships and the Draken D3 for siblings. The D9, luckily, this is ruled by another planet, Venus. So that means that the whole issue of spouse and partnerships may not be, online, which again, 7th house is not in the middle of all this, Sun, Saturn business or the eclipse energy or anything like that. So it's a little bit out of the fray. And also in this chart, all all the planets are well placed. And again, the Amsha is not ruled by Jupiter or Saturn. So there's a little bit of a, island, energetic island here with the D9. So this again, did seem like the spouse was doing their best to hold things up. And the other thing is that the spouse, again, if they're Gemini Lugna, their income might be going up because Saturn is moving off the debilitation sign of Aries for them, which is their 11th house. So there is some strength, support, and stability here because Venus is aspecting its own sign. Venus is also retrograde. There are 3 planets here, so there's some energy going on here. Yeah. Also, the other thing that was Venus is Karka meaning Venus is in the seventh house. This could mean that there's trouble with relationships or trouble specifically with the partner, not between the two partners, but the partner itself. So basically, getting back to the native, there's some trouble there. Um, then the 2, 4. Let's see, 2, 4. Okay, so here we go again. Jupiter and Saturn on Sun, all together. And so when Jupiter's running, you're going to have more positivity in second house matters, meaning like assets, family, speech. When Saturn runs, you're going to get more Saturnian energy on 2, 4, 8, and 11. So assets, family, income, home, deep psychology. Saturn's on the moon again. Again, more fear, doubt, depression potentially, and Saturn on club, group, society, and income. Okay, so yeah. Um, so yeah, Jupiter again, better, more optimistic time. Then the D3 is also Sagittarius. It's also Virgo Lugna, so also important. And again, the third house in the natal chart was Sun with Saturn, Saturn combust, and all in Aquarius, and both in Virgo. So a lot of chaos and destruction there. Luckily, here all the grahas were well placed. The Jupiter period is going to bring focus to family, home, and work because the Jupiter's aspecting those things. Then with Saturn, Saturn's pretty strong here. Saturn's exalted in the 11th house with Sun again. So again, you can see Saturn, Sun with all these. So stressful changes for family, children, coworkers, and income because those are the things that Saturn is touching. So siblings are going through it as well. And then more relationships. So Saptamsha D7 children, Dwadashamsha D12 for parent and grandparents. So in the D7 for children, Sun, Jupiter, Saturn not well placed, a very hard time. Lugnatia is Saturnian. It's also in the 8th house, not, a great position with another malefic and with its, oh, that's the other thing. Sun and Saturn are sole enemies in all these amshas. So I better put that in the slide as well. So that also means a lot of contentious energy here with authority. Sun represents authority, leadership, boss, president. Saturn represents the proletariat, like the working class. So yeah, yeah. So yeah. So all these Sun Saturn amchas, yeah, it's a lot. Okay, it's a lot. Okay. So, let's see. There's a Balarisha yoga here. So we have 1, 2, 3, 6 out of 9 planets in negative houses. That's going to bring a lot of chaotic energy here overall, because you're almost always going to be running a planet in a negative sign. We have 3 planets on the 3-8 axis. Oh no, in the 3 and 8 house, or 4 planets. Oh, sorry, 4 planets. Oh, no, sorry. 3 of the planets running through the dasha are in 3 or 8. So when you have planets running in 3 or 8, that can indicate changes and endings. Um, Jupiter is Swa, and Sun is Swa, so there's some strength or protection here. But again, a lot of challenge overall. Then the Dwadashamsha D12 for parents and grandparents. Saturn, Rahu, Sun not well placed, so challenges here to parents and grandparents. The Lugnatia Saturnian again. It's in the 12th house. This could be foreign places, losses, expenditures. This could also mean Saturn's in its own sign. This could mean parents, grandparents, or immigrants, or had some, We also have another Balarishta yoga here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 out of 9 planets in negative houses. So difficult, times overall for parents, grandparents. Jupiter Antara. Luckily, Jupiter is Swa. That'll be helpful, and it's in the 11th house. So that means like parents and grandparents probably really invested in the stock market. The Jupiter itself can represent the stock market. Okay, so taking risks, involve clubs, group societies, blah blah blah. Then the Saturn's like the opposite. Saturn's like deep in the 12th house here. This is like feast or famine cycles going on here for parents, grandparents. So slowing down assets, stress, might be leaning on religion. Saturn's aspecting and exalted in the ninth house here. This is kind of like an old-fashioned sort of hide it under the mattress mentality when things are looking grim. Even if it's not for sure yet. You know, Mercury is Swa, exalted in Virgo in the sixth house, or sorry, in the eighth house here. So this is about like keeping things clean and structured and organized. Jupiterian period, they were probably the most risk taking. But overall, it's like, try to be conservative here during the Saturn period. Okay, then on this chart, we have the health amsha. So the Tajik Shashamsha D6 for acute issues, Tajik Ashtamamsha D8 for chronic issues, then Bamsha D27 for strength and resilience. So at the top, Rahu is not well placed. It's in the sixth house, so unusual acute issues. The Lagnatia is in the eighth house. It's also in a sign of Jupiter. So, it's going to light up, even though it's not a Jupiter ruled amsha, it's going to light up the chart because of that. We have a debilitated Jupiter, and it's aspected by Saturn. It's not. No, it's aspecting Saturn and Jupiter. Sorry, Saturn and Sun. So again, that's going to bring some lift, even though Jupiter's not strong in this chart. It's still, a natural benefic. It's in a positive house. So it's going to uplift some of this authority problems going on in the ninth house, and then what's represented by the ninth house and what's represented by Sun is Graha Karaka, a planet symbol of government authority. Saturn is on Sun and Moon again, so it's on the two regents. So, obstacles to physical, mental health, and leadership. So also, like, so it's not just, the people, potentially getting laid off, but these are the people making decisions about whether to lay people off or not. I don't think it's easy for them either. Um, even though they might be getting, flack for it or whatever, they're like the messenger, from, like what's the saying, like shit flows downhill, right? It starts at the top and there it goes, right? So anyway, the second chart here, Tajik Ashtamamsha D8 for chronic issues. Rahu's not well placed. The Lagnatia is Mercury, so that's different. But again, this is a Virgo. That's the other thing you'll see is that the only amshas, again, most of the amshas are ruled by Jupiter or Saturn. And again, those are the planets we're running. The planets, the excuse me, the amshas that are not ruled by those two planets are either Taurus or Virgo, I believe. Taurus, Virgo. Maybe one other one. Yeah, so that's also interesting because Taurus and Virgo are both earth signs. And so these are going to be the ones sort of out of the fray in a way. Although, let me see, before I say that. Well, even these are nested. So like the top chart here, it's ruled by Venus, but Venus is in a sign of Jupiter. The second chart here is ruled by Mercury. Mercury's in a sign of Jupiter. And then the third one here, Mercury is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury's in a sign of Saturn. So even though they don't look like they're ruled by Saturn or Jupiter, right underneath them is Saturn and Jupiter. Okay. So especially these two top charts are going to be, even more influenced by Jupiter because of that, have more of a boost whole chart. And then the third one here is going to be more Saturnian. So the third one's, strength and resilience overall. So yeah, let's see, the D8 here, the middle chart, Rahu's not well placed. Lugnatia's in a sign of Jupiter. Venus is aspecting Jupiter. Venus and Jupiter and I wrote that wrong, but Jupiter and Venus, those are soul enemies. Those are in the ninth house. So again, more authority scuffling going on. Jupiter, Saturn, both on the Lugna. So again, it's like night and day. Energies on the whole chart. Positive and negative. Saturn is also on, again, the sun, the moon, in the fifth house, and the 11th house. So administrative, leadership obstacles, parents, children, group, society. Saturn's debilitated in the eighth, so that's deep psychology, anxiety, depression, doubt. So you can see when we switch from Jupiterian energy to Saturnian energy through the Shop period, things are going to slow down. Then the Bombsha D27, Rahu, Saturn are not well placed. They're in 3 and 8 though. So again, changes and endings. The Lignatia is in a sign of Saturn. We have a Swa Jupiter, a really strong Jupiter, so that's going to be really nice. So again, a lot of benefic energy here. But when Saturn starts running, the other thing is Saturn and Mars have a mutual aspect on each other. So Saturn and Mars together can be very like mechanical, engineering, athletic. Like we're going from a very like light, generous, again, almost like Santa Claus type energy to being very mechanical, defensive, robotic, and this is in the D27. So this is a big shift in energy here. Just, kind of sucking up and doing what you have to do type energy rather than like feeling like, oh yeah, things are great, money's coming in, life's great. So, so yeah, Jupiter is on, excuse me, Sun and Moon. So again, optimistic, strong mentally, physically during the Jupiter period, but not so much with the Saturn period, okay? And Saturn and Mars are also in the third house of endings and changes for Namsha and also the 12th house, so of losses and expenditures. So shift energetically. Then on this slide, we have spirituality and worship. So the top is the Panchamsha D5 for innate spirituality. The second is Bimshamsha D20 for formal worship. The top chart, Rahu's not well placed. We have a Swa Jupiter. So, again, a lot of happy spiritual home, family. Like that is somebody's spirituality is providing for that, taking care of that, nurturing that, and then Saturn and Sun, though, that's in the second house of family. Yeah, you can see like we're going from, again, like Jupiterian energy to Saturnian energy. Saturn is strong, it's exalted in the second house, but Saturn is also aspecting the fourth house. Again, it's debilitated in the eighth house where the moon is at, and it's aspecting the 11th house. So this is kind of like sticking close to family, home, children, being less involved in clubs, groups, societies, like bringing the energy in a bit, Um, and again, this Sun luckily is exalted in the eighth house. That should bring some energy and leadership energy. But the Saturn, when we run the Saturn period here, that's going to be pretty tough again on the mind, emotions, psychology. So, and happiness because Saturn's aspecting the fourth and the eighth houses. So again, fear, doubt, worry. This may be, kind of a crisis of faith in some ways because, it's kind of easy to be optimistic and spiritual when things are going well. It may be harder to see the, upside if there is any. That's the challenge, right? When things are not going the way we would prefer, when things don't seem to be going well, when the job is lost and the money, runs out and, this and that. So, again, luckily, it seems like if there are some, financial bumps in the road for the United States, the stock market, or what have you, that there will be recovery coming sooner than later, especially compared to past times. But still, a lot of fear, doubt, uncertainty. Definitely. Then the second chart here, quite a contrast, I would say, the Vimshamsha D20. And you can see too, look at this, the top chart D5, again, Virgo. So again, getting things under control, but Mercury staying in a sign of Saturn. So you can see just underneath it, Saturn's sort of rolling the chart by, kind of, it's like those dolls, those Russian dolls, like one doll inside of another, you know. So it's even though it's ruled by Mercury. Mercury's nested in Saturnian energy here. Then the Vimshamsa D20 for formal worship. So you have a Virgo Lugna, very important chart, and you have 4 planets on the Lugna as well: Jupiter, Mars, Mercury. So 2 indications this is a very important chart. Okay. Now Jupiter is super strong. It's in its own sign. Again, probably strong formal worship here, and Jupiter and Mercury represent education and communication, and Mars and Saturn represent, again, engineering. But Jupiter and Mars together also represent law. So I was seeing here was like very deep spiritual or like religious law or doctrine here. Okay. And so, yeah, I think there might be like a turning to spiritual doctrines or like formal training, you know, um, in a way, it's kind of, these sorts of, uncertain times, sometimes they bring us closer to spirit or God or religion or whatever, um, because we can't trust the outside world, right? The outside world is changing so much. And that's the thing, is sometimes it's like just a reminder, that all these things that may be changing, jobs, incomes, positions, finances, or whatever, we forget, like we start to get mesmerized by the outer world, the external world, and think like it's the job that's giving me the money, or the boss that's giving me the money, or the government that's giving me the money, when like all of it, from the top down is actually all provided by spirit, or the divine, whatever you want to call it. And we lose our way. It's like we get amnesia to that. Like we get too focused on the middleman. And the middleman, again, is the job, institution, government, or what have you, boss. When even them, like, what gave you that job or boss or government to begin with? Okay, so this might be in that sort of way, kind of a reminder, wake up call, but I think more of a reminder. Because again, there's some grace here, with Venus and Jupiter in the mix. I mean, what if Jupiter and Venus weren't in the mix? I mean, then we'd really be like, up a creek, right? But there is some grace here being offered. It might just be hard to see. Um, so anyway, so the D20 here, Virgo Malugna with 4 plants, important chart here. Sun is not well placed. It's with a small moon though, so, and Sun is the lord of the, again, 9th house, a government, religion, authority. So there are issues with leadership mindset, looks like. Ignatius is Swa Jupiter, so again, turning to, I think, more of a formal spiritual doctrine, formal training, like even scripture or sacred text or whatever, for support. Because the leaders may not, they're also going through all this as well. And again, like the Pope is ill right now, so, just one example. And not available to provide more spiritual direction or religious direction, potentially. Jupiter and Saturn are both aspecting the 9th house again. So Jupiter is going to be a very uplifting energy to 9th house issues. Saturn, not so much. Okay, so this might again force or bring up a crisis or even shift of faith in the absence of leadership, is what I'm saying here. And Saturn is kind of like in the main chart aspecting both Jupiter and both of its houses, Saturn and Pisces. So, again, it might be a more, frankly, darker time or slower time or not so obvious time. Again, it's easy to, like, you know, be on board with spirituality or religion when things are going well and things are going the way you want. Also, what's kind of nice, Venus is Swa, and Moon is Swa, Mercury is Swa. So mentally and emotionally, there's strength here. Okay. So that's also, positive thing. So that may be, again, sort of, um, even this chart, formal worship of whatever kind, somebody might choose, might be a bit of an oasis. Okay. So, as I mentioned, there were definitely some patterns running through, some themes running through the subcharts, all the charts. So Saturn and Sun together. Okay. 11 out of 14 charts that I've looked at for the eclipse. And again, one of these was the main chart, but 10 out of 14 charts, the subcharts, Saturn and Sun are soul enemies. we don't use that concept of soul enemies in the main chart, but in the amshas we do. So again, there's conflict going on here. Power dynamics, leadership, and workers, employees, government. Which we're seeing in many ways. Then the Jupiter ruled charts, all of them were 5 out of 14, and all of them were Sagittarius. Like we didn't have any Pisces charts, ruled charts, and this is a dual fire sign. So like, which way do we go? Which way do we act? Then the Saturnian charts, 3 of them were Aquarius, and 1 of them was Capricorn. So Aquarius is fixed air sign. Like, what do we believe? What's the paradigm? And paradigm is, again, breaking down because Saturn is combust and Purva Bhadrapada. So it's a whole new way of thinking, and by a whole new way of thinking, it's a whole new way of acting. And then the other Saturnian chart was Capricorn, movable Earth. So it's like, how do we bring all this to reality, like these new thoughts, right? Because Jupiter charts will be more active during Jupiter, but then we're switching to Saturn like 10 days out. So then it's like, okay, rather than like react with the fire, right? Because Mars is also in there, flaming, adding like kerosene to the fire, this dual fire in Sagittarius. So it's like people are like reacting right now. But it's like, how do we take a step back, think a little differently, and then bring those new thoughts, this new thought paradigm into reality and start living it out? Okay. And that's what I'm seeing here through all of this. I guess that's sort of the overall message here. Okay. And this is the new cycle of, rather than, again, people are like shocked and they're, surprised and they're fearful. So they're just like reacting. But again, at some point, it's about like, okay, take a breath, take a step back, rethink this whole thing from the ground up, you know, and then act from there and build again. That's what I'm saying. So, again, what's interesting is the spouse chart, the health charts, and the innate spirituality charts were the ones that weren't, again, directly ruled by Jupiter or Venus. Well, though, I have to recall the Venus chart. Venus was in the spouse chart. Venus was in Scorpio. Yeah. So, except for the spouse chart, all the health and the innate spirituality charts, even though they were ruled by Venus or Mercury, the Venus or Mercury were nested in signs of Jupiter and Saturn. So they're like a step away. I wouldn't say that they're immune. They're a little bit more immune to this big switch of Jupiter Saturnian energy. The other thing that's interesting is none of these charts was a water sign. So we only have fire, so action, air, thinking, and earth, like tangible. So that I thought was interesting. That may be helpful because, again, with so much uncertainty, and again, moon being Sunday, on the Rahu Ketu axis, and affected, you can see how often Saturn was on the moon as well. Like, again, choosing from an emotional place may not get you very far. Um, Again, it might be helpful to, again, just take a breath, take a step back, you know, try to get your legs back underneath you type situation. But yeah, that's what I'm seeing here, is that moving from a reflexive action point of view to a new thought paradigm and then building from there. Um, and again, especially the Jupiter and the Saturnian charts were all about career, income, but also the children and grandparents. So we're talking about generational changes here. Like, this is going to affect, whatever the new paradigm is, if we're choosing from a deeper place of spirituality, because we're sort of waking up a little bit more to that, because that's, again, D20. This formal worship chart was probably the strongest amsha, or even like of the natal chart. This is like the strongest one. There are going to be repercussions, both up and down the family line in terms of the legacy that's healed from the past or built for the future. So that's also on the line. And that's also a part of any eclipse, because, again, what's in the eclipse, what's involved in the eclipse? Sun, moon, Rahu, and Ketu. Sun represents father, moon represents mother, Rahu represents maternal grandparents, and Ketu represents paternal grandparents. So whenever we have an eclipse, they're essentially, you know, even if we don't have all the charts and subcharts playing out quite like this, there's always this deeper energy embedded in an eclipse of a generational pattern shift. Okay, so there you go. So yeah, so anyway, a lot through the talk today, but hopefully it was, again, I always hope these talks are helpful, useful, and interesting to you in many ways. Again, if you're interested in learning more about Vedic astrology, all of my teaching videos are my concepts playlist. They can be found there. More famous charts, I would look at my birth charts archive list 2024 video for now until I update it to the 2025 video. I do offer individual birth chart readings. If that's of interest, you can email heartlightash@yahoo.com. I do have another YouTube channel on natural medicine where I talk about Ayurveda, traditional Indian medicine, yoga, so other Vedic arts, as well as other paradigms of medicine like homeopathy, naturopathic medicine. The name of that chart's Nature Source Care, so that's out there too as a resource for you. So again, I know it's a challenging time for a lot of people. So again, I hope this talk was helpful in various ways. So as always, you take good care of yourself. And until the next one, namaste.